A woman who has long passed. Yet every night, the wind chime outside the window still rings. Even when the air is completely still. And in a small home in Malacca, a bowl, a pair of chopsticks, and a seat at the table are still set, just for her. Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're diving into one of the oldest and most mysterious customs in Chinese culture, Ming. More widely known as ghost marriage, a union between the living and the dead. If you've never heard of it before, brace yourself. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a typical ghost story. It's a tragic love tale. An unfulfilled promise. And a bond that lingers, even after life itself has ended. And if you've ever experienced loss, if someone you loved was taken too soon, then maybe, just maybe, tonight's story will make you wonder. Can death really separate two people who are meant to be together? This story takes us back more than 15 years. To the historic streets of Malacca, Malaysia. Home to generations of the Chinese diaspora. Our main character is a girl named June, who grew up in what seemed like an ordinary family. Until the day she witnessed her brother marry his fiancée, who had already passed away. From that moment on, the presence of a sister-in-law never left their home. But not in a terrifying way. It was something else. Something strangely warm. Sometimes, it was the gentle chime of bells in the night. Sometimes, a whisper only June could hear. And this isn't just superstition. This is a true story. Told through the deepest memories of a child. A memory of love, of loss. And of the things science still can't explain. My name is June. I'm an adult now, with a job, a normal life, nothing out of the ordinary. But there's a part of my past I've never spoken about outside my family. Not because I'm afraid people won't believe me, but because I'm afraid they won't feel it the way I did. I grew up in Malacca, Malaysia. A city that's both ancient and peaceful. If you've ever been there, you'll remember the red brick streets, the yellow-painted wooden houses weathered by time, and the faint scent of incense lingering in the morning air from Chinese temples tucked between alleyways. That's where my parents lived. That's where my brother, Daniel, and I grew up. Daniel is nearly 20 years older than me. For some, that kind of age gap might create distance. But to me, he was my anchor. He was already working when I was still in preschool. He picked me up from school when Dad was busy and Mom was sick. He sat by my bed when I had fevers, and helped me with homework just because I was scared to do it alone. Daniel never talked much. But I always knew, he loved me deeply. And the only person he ever fully opened up to, besides our family, was Alyssa. I still remember the first time I met her. She wore a crisp white blouse. Her hair tied low. Carrying a few children's books and some boxes of crayons. She was a preschool teacher, the kind of gentle that wasn't weak. She didn't just love my brother, she cared about each one of us. As if she had already been part of the family for years. I called her so, a traditional Chinese term for sister-in-law. Even though they weren't married yet. To me, she already was. She'd take me to the market on weekends. Teach me how to fold paper cranes and wrap New Year cakes. On rainy afternoons, she'd lend me her scarf and say, "Keep warm, or your brother will worry." Those little things. They may seem small, but they've stayed with me, deep in my memory. Daniel and Alyssa got engaged when I was 9. It felt like a real wedding in our house. Mom had already prepared a traditional Chinese dress. And I was officially named the Flower Girl. Even though I didn't really know what that meant at the time. Everything seemed set for a happy ending. But no one saw it coming. Just weeks before the wedding, a tragic accident happened. And it changed everything. Alyssa wasn't the kind of person who stood out in a flashy or glamorous way. Quite the opposite, actually. If you had passed her on the street, you might have thought she was just a regular preschool teacher. A plain cotton blouse, worn-out sandals, and her hair tied loosely in a low ponytail, slightly messy after a long day of teaching. But to me, she was the warmest person I had ever met. I don't remember exactly when we became so close. Maybe it was the first time she brought over a little bento box. And inside, she had packed a portion of egg fried rice just for me. Even though she was only visiting our house that day, she'd thought of me. Or maybe it was the time she slipped a bunny-shaped hair clip into my hand and whispered, "Don't tell your brother I bought 2 of the same. He gets jealous so easily." I was just a kid, but I could feel it. She didn't treat me kindly out of politeness. She truly loved me, like family. Every weekend, she'd take me to Jonker Street Market. While the grown-ups browsed antiques, we'd head straight for the stalls that sold paper crafts and little trinkets. One day, she asked me, "Wanna try making your own red envelopes for Lunar New Year?" We picked out red paper, gold ribbon, glitter, and spent the whole afternoon at home, surrounded by the smell of glue and our laughter echoing through the house. When I was sad, she never pushed me to talk. She'd just sit beside me, gently fix my hair, and hum a Chinese folk song I didn't quite understand. But that somehow made me feel at peace. My brother, Daniel, wasn't a talkative person. But when he was with Alyssa, he changed. He smiled more. He even started learning how to cook. I remember once catching him fumbling around the kitchen, trying to make her favorite, black sesame chicken. Everyone in the family knew he loved her deeply. And what made it even more special was that his love didn't pull him away from us. It brought all of us closer together. My mom once said something I'll never forget. Not every woman who marries your son sees your daughter as her own. But Alyssa, she's different. One time, I had a fight with Daniel. He wouldn't let me use the computer. So I ran outside crying, threatening to run away from home. It was Alyssa who chased after me. She found me sitting on the ground in front of a temple, clutching a plastic cat. She didn't scold me. She didn't even try to reason with me. She just said, "If you leave, who's gonna fold paper cranes with me? Who's gonna eat mom's banana cake for me when I'm trying to watch my weight?" I burst out laughing and ran into her arms. Alyssa had this way of making everything feel lighter, even the biggest storms inside a child's heart. She once promised that after the wedding, she'd take me to Penang for a beach trip. She'd buy me a red dress for the next Lunar New Year. She'd teach me how to write Chinese characters properly. And I believed it. I truly did. Until that one fateful day. That morning started like any other. Soft sunlight filtered through the window. Mom was cooking roasted rice porridge in the kitchen. And I was struggling to tie my hair in front of the mirror, already running late for school. Alyssa had taken the day off from teaching to prepare for a family meeting. Both sides were finally going to set a wedding date, pick an auspicious time, and decide on the betrothal gifts. Everyone was looking forward to it. I remember clearly, right before she left the house. She leaned down, fixed the button on my shirt, and whispered, "Come home early this afternoon. I have a gift for you, something I want to give you before the big family gathering." I nodded, never realizing that would be the last time I saw her smile. That afternoon, right after I finished tutoring, the skies suddenly opened. A torrential tropical downpour swept through the streets of Malacca. Nothing unusual, yet something felt off. When I got home, the front gate wasn't closed like it usually was. My parents stood in the courtyard, faces pale. Daniel was sitting on the front steps, drenched from head to toe, gripping a broken necklace tightly in his hand. His face was ghost white. His eyes, completely empty. Before I could ask anything, my mother pulled me into her arms, holding me tight, trembling. "Alyssa, there was an accident, honey. At the school, the roof collapsed." I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. She had gone to the school that day to pick up some documents, off the schedule. There had been a group of students staying late for makeup classes. And then it happened. A large beam collapsed, one that had weakened from years of water damage in the roof. They said. When Alyssa saw it falling, she didn't run. She ran toward the children. And then, there was no time. She was rushed to the hospital. But she didn't make it. They said it all happened too fast. No one could have stopped it. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there, frozen, watching people run in and out. Phones ringing non-stop. Mom sobbing in the living room. And the sound of rain outside, heavy, endless. That night, Daniel sat silently next to Alyssa's temporary altar, set up in the house. On the table was a photo, still not framed. A few sticks of half-burnt incense. And the fabric bracelet she used to wear. He didn't speak. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. When Mom gently placed a hand on his shoulder, he just shook his head. The next day, I passed by his room and saw the door slightly ajar. He was sitting on the floor, holding a small notebook. Alyssa's wedding planner. She had written down every detail for the ceremony. He flipped through the pages, then stopped at a line she had carefully written. "Get Cheongsam for June, smallest size." And then I heard him say, barely breathing, "I still want to marry her. Alyssa is still my wife." That sentence hit like lightning in the middle of my chest. I was too young to fully grasp what it meant. But I knew, deep down, nothing in our home would ever be the same. From the night my brother said he still wanted to marry Alyssa, the air in our house felt heavier. No one answered him. No one knew what to say. My mom gently held his hand, then quietly left the room. My father stared at him for a long time, his aging eyes growing heavier with each second. We all tried to carry on. But normal no longer felt possible. Daniel was no longer himself. He still lived in the house, still sat at the dinner table. But he didn't eat. He listened when we talked, but never replied. Day after day, he sat by Alyssa's window, where a small wind chime would ring whenever a breeze passed through the hallway. Some mornings, I'd wake at 5 a.m., walk past his room, and see the light still on. He didn't sleep. It was as if he was afraid. Afraid that if he closed his eyes, all memory of her would vanish. A week later, my mother told me to skip school for a day. She needed me to accompany her to Alyssa's family home. "There are things we need to discuss," she said. "But you must promise, no questions. Don't speak unless spoken to." I sat outside their living room, hearing only fragments of the conversation inside. There were no arguments. Just soft, weighted voices. Phrases like, "We're not stopping him, but are you sure this is what he wants? This isn't normal. She's at peace now. But Daniel isn't." In the end, both families agreed. Not because they believed it would bring Alyssa back, but because it was the only thing that might help Daniel stay alive. A few days later, our families began preparing for a ghost marriage, a traditional Chinese ritual in which the living may wed the deceased, to honor a vow, or complete a love that ended too soon. We sought the guidance of an elder monk in the area. Someone who had performed such rites in the past. He didn't flinch at Daniel's request. He simply said, "This ceremony isn't about calling the dead back. It's about sending them off, properly, with love." The date was set for the full moon. A time when, as the monk explained, the line between yin and yang is thinnest. I'll never forget that night. The living room was turned into a sacred space. A simple altar. Alyssa's photo framed in white lilies. 2 pairs of chopsticks set side by side on the offering table. And a handmade fabric doll. Dressed in the very red cheongsam Alyssa had chosen for the wedding. Daniel wore a traditional groom's tunic. Standing silently beside her photo. The monk led the ceremony. Chanting prayers, lighting incense. Bowing with reverence. Both families were there. No one sobbed aloud. But I knew. Every heart in that room was quietly breaking. At the end of the ritual, Daniel knelt before the altar. Took a small wedding ring from his pocket. Engraved with both their names inside. And placed it gently into the doll's hand. And he said, "From this day forward, you are still my wife." That wedding was unlike any I'd ever seen. There was no joyful music. No flower-adorned cars. No groom walking his bride into a grand hall. And yet, there was something sacred about the atmosphere that evening. So solemn and still, that everyone instinctively spoke in hushed tones. As if afraid of disturbing a world that might be quietly watching from the other side. The living room had been completely cleared. A mat was laid down. And 8 white candles were lit, 4 on each side of the altar. At the center stood the wedding table. Alyssa's photo framed in red. Offerings of her favorite dishes, fresh fruit, red bean soup, sticky rice cakes, and a bowl of seaweed soup. On one side sat our family. On the other, Alyssa's parents. Quiet, hand in hand. They had cried so much in the days before. But tonight, they sat in silence. As if giving away their daughter, to a different kind of place. In the middle, Daniel sat upright in a wooden chair. Dressed in a traditional black tunic. With red embroidery at the cuffs. Simple, but formal. Before him sat a small table. Holding a handcrafted bridal doll. Its tiny frame dressed in red and gold fabric. Its braided hair adorned with a silver hairpin. It wasn't a toy. It was a symbolic bride for the ghost marriage. Inside the doll, we had placed a few keepsakes. A piece of Alyssa's old blouse. Her favorite hair clip. And a handwritten note listing her birth and death dates. The air in the room felt thick, unmoving. Incense smoke curled upward, drawing invisible shapes into the stillness. The monk began chanting. A small bell rang at steady intervals. Not loud, not sharp. Just enough to stir reverence in every heart. With each chime, my own heartbeat seemed to slow, matching the rhythm of another world, where the boundary between the living and the dead was quietly fading. Daniel knelt before the altar, palms pressed together, then bowed 3 times. Afterward, he gently slipped a tiny wedding ring onto the doll's finger. The same ring he had commissioned months earlier. Engraved inside with 2 names, Daniel and Alyssa. No one laughed. But no one cried aloud either. The whole ceremony moved slowly, in silence. Accompanied only by the monks chanting. And the sound of hearts quietly breaking. At the end, the bridal doll was placed into a small wooden box, lined with red cloth, and brought home, not as a toy, but as a bride. A bride not of flesh and blood, but of memory, love, and everything that still remained. From that night on, we always set one extra place at the dinner table, beside Daniel. Mom said it was so she wouldn't feel forgotten. And strangely, though no one ever said it aloud, no one in the house ever forgot to invite Alyssa to eat. As if she were still there. After the ghost wedding, life in our house slowly returned to its rhythm. No one talked much about Alyssa anymore. No one spoke of the ceremony, as if it were something odd. But deep down, I knew everyone still felt her presence. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in quiet, intimate ways. She didn't return in vivid dreams. There were no voices, no haunting signs. But there were small things, so subtle that if you weren't paying attention, you might dismiss them as coincidence. Like the wind chime. The little plum blossom wind chime Alyssa once gave me, still hung outside my bedroom window. She used to say, "Whenever there's wind, the sound will remind you that someone is always thinking of you." After the wedding, I started to notice, even on the stillest nights, with no breeze, no sound in the air, at exactly 11 p.m., the chime would ring once. Just once. Not a jingle. Not a clatter. Just a single, gentle note. Soft enough to stir memory. At first, I thought maybe it was a rat, or vibration from a passing car. But even during heavy storms, when the whole city felt submerged, that soft chime still came. Always on time. Like a quiet hello. And then there were the gifts. Back then, I loved stationery. Especially stickers and cartoon pens. Alyssa knew that. Wherever she went, she'd bring back a little something for me. After she passed, I kept all those gifts in a wooden box, locked away. But just weeks after the wedding, I started finding new stickers. Ones I hadn't bought. Ones I'd never seen before. One day, I found a small notebook, neatly placed in my desk drawer. On the first page was a handwritten note. "Keep studying, okay? I believe you can do it." My hands shook. I knew that handwriting. The way she wrote the word "you." Slightly tilted, slightly rounded. No one else in the house could mimic it. I showed it to Mom. She looked at me for a long time. Then said, "Some people, when they love deeply enough, even when they're no longer here, they still find a way to leave something behind." Then there was Daniel. After the wedding, he wasn't broken the way he had been. He started eating again. He went back to work. But something in him had changed. He was quieter. Steadier. Like someone who had lived through something no words could describe. He kept the bridal doll next to the dining table. No one dared move it. And every night, he poured a small cup of tea and set it in front of her. One evening, I asked him, "Do you think she's still here?" Daniel didn't answer. He just smiled. A soft, almost weightless smile. And said, "If you can still feel her, then maybe she never really left." Alyssa's presence in our home, though no one ever said it aloud, felt like more than just small gifts or the sound of wind chimes. There was something else. Something more. As if she hadn't just stayed, but was quietly protecting us. In her own gentle way. I remember one night in mid-July. Malacca was burning hot. The kind of heat that clings to your skin. Daniel had taken on a small project, installing electrical wiring at a woodworking shop near the river. That day, the client had asked for a rush job. So Daniel stayed late, working until nearly 10 p.m. He was alone, finishing the final circuit inside a large control cabinet. According to him, as he was bent over, checking the last wire, he suddenly heard a voice. Soft, but clear. Daniel, get up. He thought he imagined it. But in that exact moment, there was a loud pop from the panel. A wire had shorted out, sending sparks right where his head had been. Had he not moved, he could have been electrocuted on the spot. When he came home and told us the story, his expression was hard to read, somewhere between fear and gratitude. Mom turned pale. I just stared at him, speechless. Are you sure you heard it? I asked. He nodded. It sounded just like Alyssa. Soft, but firm. I felt a chill. Not from fear, but from a strange, comforting sense that someone had caught him just before the fall. The second time was mine. It was a rainy night, and I had a high fever. I was too weak to get up. Lying in my bed, half conscious, alone. In that blurred space between dreaming and waking, I felt someone sitting beside me. A cool hand touched my forehead. A soft rhythm tapped gently on my shoulder, like a lullaby without words. I tried to open my eyes, and in the dim light, I saw the faint outline of a woman. Not clearly, just a silhouette. Long hair, white blouse, sitting quietly by my bed. I wasn't afraid. I felt safe. Just like I did when Alyssa used to stroke my hair after I cried. After I got in trouble at school. After I fought with my brother. The next morning, my fever had broken. Mom said no one had gone into my room that night. They thought I was asleep. But I knew I hadn't been alone. Since then, I've believed one thing with certainty. Alyssa never really left. She wasn't haunting us. She was guarding us. Not loud. Not visible. Like wind. Like incense smoke. But always there, right when we needed her most. There are things we don't ask, don't explain, don't even say aloud. But that doesn't mean they're not real. In our home, ever since Daniel and Alyssa's ghost wedding, there's something we all silently accept, though no one dares speak it. Alyssa is still here. Her presence isn't just a feeling. It's not just a sound or a dream. Sometimes, it becomes a visible image, clear, undeniable. When I was 13, I got a small digital camera for my birthday. Just a simple one, good for taking a few dozen pictures to upload later. I was obsessed. I photographed everything. The longan tree behind the house. Our family dinners. Mom sewing. Daniel reading. And sometimes, the dining table where Alyssa's wedding dolls sat. One evening, after our Lunar New Year's Eve dinner, I scrolled through the photos, trying to pick a few to print. And then, I saw something. In one of the photos, the whole family is sitting around the table, laughing, eating. The lighting is warm. The room full of life. But at the head of the table, in the chair we always left empty for Alyssa, there was a shape. Not a clear face. No sharp lines. But a faint figure. A slim woman. Long hair. Wearing white. Head slightly bowed. Hands resting on the table. As if she were sitting with us. As if she'd never missed a single meal. My hands trembled. But I wasn't scared. I just felt full. Heavy. Moved. I didn't tell anyone at first. I saved the photo in a private folder on the computer. And named it, Sister-in-Law. Every time I opened it, I stared at that shape, as if trying to prove to myself that it wasn't just a reflection, or a glitch in the lens. A few weeks later, Mom stumbled upon the picture. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "Maybe she just couldn't bear to leave us." Later, Daniel saw it too. He didn't look surprised. He simply held the photo, gazed at it silently, then folded it carefully, and placed it in the drawer, where he kept all of Alyssa's keepsakes. No one in our family ever mentioned that photo again. But after that, I started to notice. On special days, Lunar New Year, the Ghost Festival, her death anniversary, in random, quick snapshots, there was always something. A blur, a streak of light, a pale corner. Never clear, but never missing. No one could explain it, but no one denied it. Because maybe some things aren't meant to be seen with the eyes, but felt with the heart. And deep down, my heart always knew. She never left. Sometimes I wonder, if Alyssa were still alive, how different would my brother's life be? Maybe they would have had children by now. Maybe I'd be an aunt, spoiling a little niece or nephew. Maybe every Lunar New Year, our family would stay up late, eating sticky rice cakes and chatting deep into the night, like so many other families do. But life doesn't come with what-ifs. Some people come into your life for just a moment, and leave behind something that lasts forever. Alyssa was one of those people. Many years have passed since that strange and sacred night of the ghost wedding. The house looks the same. The dining table still has 5 chairs, though only 4 are used. The bridal doll is still kept clean, always in its place. The wedding photo, designed from the very outfit Alyssa had picked, is still sitting beside the family portraits. Daniel is different now. He lives more gently, no longer closed off like he once was. But he's never loved anyone else. He never brought anyone new into our home. Never once considered remarrying. One time, Mom asked him, "You're still young. If someone comes along and makes you happy, I won't stop you." Daniel just shook his head and smiled. "I'm not alone. She's still here." And somehow, I believe him. No need to see. No need to hear. Just feel. Just remember. When I'm sad, the wind chime still rings softly. When I fall, something inside always whispers, "It's okay. Get back up." Love doesn't end when someone leaves. Sometimes, real love begins in the moment of loss. Because when there's no more time to make promises, you're left with only your heart to keep them. Alyssa no longer exists in the visible world, but in the world of memories, of quiet comfort, of nighttime whispers. She never left. The story of Alyssa and Daniel isn't just a tragic love story. It's a glimpse, raw, profound, into a tradition that has existed for hundreds, even thousands of years in Chinese culture. That tradition is called Ming, or more commonly, ghost marriage. Ming is a marriage between 2 worlds. Between the living and the dead. Or between 2 souls who have already passed on. There are 2 main forms of ghost marriage. One is a union between 2 deceased individuals. Often when both died young, before they had the chance to marry. According to ancient beliefs, a soul that dies unmarried may wander in loneliness, unable to find peace. A ghost marriage helps complete their destiny, offering companionship in the afterlife. The second, rarer, is a union between a living person and someone who has passed away. Like the story you've just heard. This form is less common. and even more unique when done not out of superstition, but because of a promise left unfulfilled. A love that never had the chance to be whole. In both cases, Minghan is not merely a mystical ritual. It's a farewell, carried out with reverence and humanity. A way for the living to say goodbye to someone they loved. With dignity, with completeness, and with love. You may find the practice strange. You may not believe in it. But sometimes, when people believe deeply enough, not to hold on, but to continue loving silently, even a soul can stay. And what about you? Do you believe that someone who's passed can still be near? Have you ever dreamt of someone you lost? Felt a hand on your shoulder? Heard a voice only you could hear? And wondered, was that them? If you've ever experienced anything like that, even the smallest moment, feel free to share it in the comments below. Who knows? Your story might help someone else feel a little less alone.